Welcome to Typically Unique Real Talk with your hosts, Kim and Carlos. Get ready to dive into the unexpected with us each week as we bring you fresh perspectives on a wide range of topics. From the typical to the very unique, we promise to surprise you every time. Join us for thought-provoking discussions, plenty of laughs, and a whole lot of entertainment. If you're ready, let's get into it. Welcome back to Typically Unique. I'm Kim Aponte, and I'm here with my husband, Carlos.
Hello.
We're talking about the Idaho 4 case today, episode 2 for that little bonus series. And we said on our last episode, we would talk about how they came to arrest Brian Kohberger, so the suspect that they have in custody right now.
That's correct.
Right. So we're going to get into some discussion about that today. We see it two different ways, I think.
Yes, I see it as so far as I know, they arrested the right person, but I think you had some questions as to how did they land on? Right.
How did we get to him? It's confusing to me because I've seen so much information come out and things that have questions, but basically there's DNA and a car, right? So in the beginning of the case, there was a white car seen on video footage circling around the neighborhood, doing 3-point turns, backing up, driving by, pulling through a gas station nearby. So that was caught. So then the police put out a request to the public. Anyone, I guess they identified it initially as a 2013 Hyundai Elantra, but then the year changed. And that was one of the questions initially, because if you're going to your experts, right, you're a car expert and they know makes, models, inside and out. I can look at a tire track and I can know what, exact year that was. And they got the year wrong. So that was a little concerning. But so they put out this call for a white Hyundai Elantra. They got a ton of tips. One of the tips that went nowhere was that car that was found in Oregon. It was abandoned, and there was a frenzy over that for a minute, but I guess they ruled that out.
So that brings up something. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but so there's an all points bulletin, right, about a white sedan.
That's what they called it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this white sedan. And immediately, because you have to understand that the time frame around this. This was somebody who was out at 4 a.m, right? Because this is when these atrocities occurred. Was around 4 a.m. So they're pleading to the public, hey, if you know anybody with a white sedan, later a Hyundai Elantra, wrong year, but then they ended up getting it right. Well, who knows if they got it right? They know it's a white sedan, right? Yep. And I think through further investigation and maybe blowing up some pictures and things like that, and realizing, okay, this sedan who's doing the 3-point turn, this seems to be the right year, make, and model of the car we're looking for. A lot of people went out and, said they probably got some tips.
Oh, lots of tips.
About, this car, the one in Oregon, and so people are on the lookout for that, right? Because, a very horrible thing happened, so they're trying to ask the public for their help. Okay, continue.
So with the car, on November 20th, so that happened on November 13th. The car was found on November 29th at Washington State University. That's where the suspect was a teaching assistant because he's in a, what did we call it? The why am I drawing a blank? A PhD program. And they become teacher's assistants. It was either a security person, someone patrolling the parking lot, found this white Elantra, turned it in. They find out it was his. And so that's how he got identified by the car. That was on November 29th. But he's not arrested until, I believe, the beginning of the year, like beginning of January. And I know he definitely made it past Christmas. So somewhere around the new year, when he got arrested. So just to backtrack, when the timeline of the night was, because I wanted to talk about how shocked we were when his name came out, because he was on nobody's radar. Like,
for sure.
At the time when this happened, so they had a timeline of between 4 a.m. and 4:27 a.m. So remember, two of the roommates were they're reportedly in the house when this happens. One of the victims received a DoorDash at 4 a.m. And this is in the probable cause affidavit. So these are facts that led to the arrest, that same person, that same victim that got the DoorDash at 4 a.m. was scrolling TikTok at 4:12. So then that means one person went in between 4:12 and 4:27 is when he's reportedly leaving, and walks past one of the survivors, and that's when she sees bushy eyebrows. So bushy eyebrows and a height is what was given as a description of this suspect, and she froze, according to the wording in the probable cause, and he walks past her and exits.
Yes. So
there's a description of the person. There's a white car. We know the times. That white car is seen. Once they identified his car, they said it's seen on camera. So now they can trace it back from Washington State University and say, when did it leave the campus? And I think it was about 3:30 in the morning when he first left. Right. So then for about a half an hour, it's seen circling around the area of the house.
Right. Because it's only like 10 minutes away or something like that, right?
Right. So what I wanted to say was, before we knew, when they came out and said, hey, there's this teacher assistant at Washington that has this car, everybody was thinking it was ex-boyfriends or that hoodie guy at the food truck or this Adam guy that they said something about, or, the suspicious activity in the house during the 8 hours before there's a 911 call. Like, all these speculations are going on. And then at the beginning of the year, around the New Year time, we get the name. Yeah. And a suspect who's arrested in Pennsylvania, and everybody was like, who? Yeah. Like, who is this guy?
Right. So how did they get there, I guess, is the question, right? And so you mentioned a couple things that I think were working in parallel at the same time, right? So you have this, a little bit of an eyewitness account, very little. You have this vehicle. So just with those two things, you have to kind of match it, right? Mm-hmm. You have to match those two things together. So you find out the day of or the day after or a couple of days after that we're looking for a tall, bushy-eyebrowed white male, right? That's all they had. That's very vague.
That's the description.
So if we're looking at white Elantras, if we're trying to minimize the white Elantras that are in their area, and I'm just going to throw out a stupid number and say it's 10,000, okay? And
you're probably not far off.
Yeah, and 5,000 are registered to minorities.
Right, so you can rule them out.
Throw those away, right? 2,500 are registered to women.
Mm-hmm.
You throw those away. You're down to a certain amount, and anytime someone identifies a white Elantra within that year range, right? You say, okay, license plate number, if I'm going to run it real quick, license plate number, and if something comes up, height, 6'2". Look at his bushy eyebrows. Okay, that's in the maybe pile. You know, 5'0", you know,
Right.
That's
blonde guy with light eyebrows.
Right. That's in the not pile, right?
Right.
So I think things started stacking up in the BK, Brian Koberger pile. You know, okay, it's not the one thing, but I can put it in this pile.
Okay.
Right? You know, white Elantra. Bushy eyebrows. Tall. Okay, it's not excluding.
Right. I got your point.
It's adding.
Yep.
So, but the other important thing about this is where they really kind of landed on Brian Koberger was the DNA evidence. Do you want to talk about like how that was found and what all that is?
Yeah. So they found a knife sheath next to one of the victims on the third floor in the bed. And on that sheath, on the button snap, was singular source DNA. So like a few cells, like skin cells. So it's like touch DNA.
Touch DNA. Gotcha.
And
but it was a good example because you say single source, right? And I hear that in some.
Yeah, I don't know all the jargon. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
What exactly that means, you know, I guess it means it's not a good, you know, it's not from saliva. It's not like the way they would typically get many sources. I don't know. It's like skin cells versus.
Well, I think that's the touch DNA definition. I think single source DNA.
Maybe it's different.
Is that that's pretty solid DNA.
Meaning one person, not mixed in with anybody else.
Yeah, so it's pretty solid. Like, hey, we can depend on this being a statistical, right? You know, that if they tested his blood, and his being whoever the person who put that DNA on there, if they tested him against that would be an absolute match.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know. Let us, roast us in the comments if we've got this all wrong. We discuss this with us, set us straight. But my understanding of it, and I've heard lots of discussions about this, was that it was comparable to touch DNA, but because that was the big controversy, and it's also jokish in the true crime community about, don't touch the cereal boxes at the grocery store because like it's transfer DNA, meaning, I picked up that item at a store and I was looking at it and then I put it down. Then someone else bought it and they took it home and now my DNA is on it.
Right.
So that's been a lot of the discussion around that. So whatever it is, however it got there, however, they found it.
But it puts that piece of evidence in that pile.
Yes.
Doesn't exclude them. But it puts him in that pot. So now we got three things.
So apparently they sent that to a lab.
Oh, okay.
Out of the jurisdiction of the the Idaho investigation. I think it went to another state. I don't know if it was FBI level. I'm not sure. Probably expedited, because they were on a rush to find out who did this.
For sure.
And this is where my confusion comes in because there's the comparison to a parent, but obviously they must have run the DNA testing and, like you said, through the genetic genealogy. And if you haven't watched any of those shows, there's some shows on TV where they solve cold cases through this. They can develop the genetic profile. So it's an unknown, but they can look at all the genetics and then start pinpointing like a family name. They have to compare it to someone who's in, and this is where the big controversy comes in, someone who's in a DNA database. Right. And like all those 23andMe type sites and things like that. And if you're in there and you had to like opt out, and if you didn't opt out, I think you're automatically in or something like that. If you're in there and able to be compared to and if they get a hit, That's what they're hoping for. But it could be a hit to like an eighth cousin 5 times removed, and these genealogy specialists will work backwards, and which is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And say like, okay, we know this is a male son of this person, and do it that way, of this family name.
Yes. So from what I remember of those, so we're laymen's, right? We're not experts in this. So we're 2 laymen's trying to help each other understand how all this works, right?
Yep.
And we assume that maybe some of you that are out there, right?
That know more, let us know.
That know more, let us know. But for us laymen's, people who don't really understand, I wish they could explain it to us in a way that we could understand. And I think her name's Cece Moore or something.
Yeah.
I forget her last name. But she did a show. She had a show, a very short period of time, and she explained it very well.
Yeah, it was fascinating to watch.
So I would look up, Cece Moore.
She would be a good one.
Explaining how genetic DNA works. But just to piggyback on what you said, an unknown piece of DNA is compared to a public, supposedly, database that's available. This person could be 5th cousins with somebody else. They have to work this suspect and this person who's in the DNA database and keep going back and find out where they meet. And it could be 5 or 6 great grandparents from there.
Yep.
And then they try to find the lineage on this side, of the tree to say, okay, who is this unknown person based on the common person that's way up there? And from what we've heard, because we're laymen's, this takes typically a month.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
It takes a very long time.
Because they have to dig through records, newspapers, births, death certificates, all that kind of stuff to really do the investigating. The genetics don't tell you that. You have to find the documents of who these people are.
Right. And there could be some breaks in the tree along the way. someone got adopted. Someone was, so there's a lot of things that you have to consider as you go through this. Is this, person, that we're going to be landing on, supposedly, could be the son of this person, are they still around? They do a lot of investigating to give a name or a couple names to law enforcement to say, follow up on this. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. But I guess the point is they did that very quickly.
Yes.
Because they wanted to find this person because this was a very high profile,
because
scary
it happened on the 13th, got the, name in December.
Yeah,
all this. They were able to compare it to a source in December. So how did he get arrested in Pennsylvania?
Right.
So his father flew in to drive back home with him he's from Pennsylvania, from like the Pocono Mountain region, and father flew in to drive back with him for Christmas break.
Yes.
My question is, if he was the suspect, why let him leave the state? Why not, especially if you have this DNA on the sheath and you have a car and he's a suspect, why not call him in for an interview?
Right.
That's a typical practice. Hey, where were you on this night? We could take a DNA test for us. I don't understand why they wouldn't have done that to begin with, instead of letting him drive from Washington State all the way across the country to Pennsylvania.
So I think my answer to that is, and I don't know if it's the right one, but in some old crime shows that we watch, right? We've watched a lot, documentaries, the 48 Hours, 2020, all that stuff. Almost every single one, every single time that they get a DNA at the crime scene, right? And they pull that and they run it through this CODIS database and it doesn't spit out a name, right? An actual name.
Because they do that first.
Yeah, so they didn't spit out the Brian Koberger name running it through CODIS.
No.
So we have to verify, and I think I remember in a lot of these crime shows that we've watched, for them to get search warrants, for them to proceed in a legal way, you have to confirm the DNA match, right? So that's where they kind of stake this person out. And if they go out to eat, they, go into the restaurant with them. And if they, drink out of a glass or a straw, they grab it, or if they go outside, smoke a cigarette, and they throw the button, they grab that, whatever they can to match the DNA. And I think that's what they were kind of waiting for. We need corroboration on this name, right?
But they didn't do that either.
Exactly. So that's why they didn't arrest him in Washington or tip their hand and bring him in when he was in Washington, because I believe he feels, I got away with this. I am such a genius, and this was my plan all along. They're never going to catch me, so I can stay in the area. I can watch all this stuff going on, because supposedly he even drove back to the area the next morning. He wants to, revel in all of this, that's going on. He has no clue that they have a piece of DNA. This guy was a crime scene doctorate student.
Right. But that is my number one question about this that makes it weird to me, is if it's such a dire situation, just because of the event that happened, how horrible it was, we want this person caught.
Right.
All of our college kids have left because they're terrified we want them back.
Right.
That was a big pressure item. If you have DNA and you have a suspect, you call them in, you swab their cheeks, you match the things, you arrest him. You don't let him flee across the country. It could have been a faster arrest, in my opinion, if they could have done that.
Don't disagree.
And I question why not. I need an answer to that question. So when trial comes, I hope I get that answer.
That's the answer I'm trying to give, is that they already have eyes on him, right? We already have 3 things over here that this guy, compared to Adam and ex-boyfriend and drug dealers and all this other stuff and food truck people, this guy we're going to keep eyes on. So they got eyes on him, right? What they're trying to do is now build something. We have to build a case because this is weak. It's pretty weak over here. So how do we get DNA from him unbeknownst to him? Because we need to validate first before we just start bringing people in, especially people who aren't associated with these people.
I know, but he has trash in Washington State. You don't got to go get trash in Pennsylvania. Get the trash. And he's living solo in Washington. Yeah. You have a 100% chance of getting his trash in Washington, and you have a 25% or whatever 33% chance if there's 3 people in the house in Pennsylvania.
So just from the crime shows that I watch, and again, I'm a layman, I can't get a search warrant to go into his apartment unless I have compelling evidence that I can tell the judge, this is my guy. I
know, but once your trash is at the curb, it's public.
But he's not. So we know when he goes to Pennsylvania, he's well ahead of everybody because he ain't throwing his trash to the curb.
Well, I haven't heard anybody speak to that yet, but that's a possibility. Yeah. So he does drive all the way to Pennsylvania with his dad, and they get pulled over on the freeway. A
couple times.
Not once. Yeah. Twice within at least 20 miles or it was a super short, maybe it was 20 minutes. Maybe it was a 20-minute time period. So you get pulled over once, you're like, ooh, that's, You get pulled over twice in 20 minutes. He must have been freaking out. And there were a lot of close-up hand, looking at his hand, because a lot of discussion has been, were they trying to see if there were cuts on his hand? Right. It kind of looked like a shadow. You couldn't really tell.
But this is almost a month later, though, right?
It's, yes. And about a month later. healed, scarred, Dad seemed oblivious. Like he truly just looked like he had no idea. Right. Like, in my opinion, from watching that footage. So then they make it back to Pennsylvania, and in the middle of the night, you tell that part because...
Well, so...
I don't... Yeah. And a lot of the stories that came out about that, or the reports... I don't know how verified they are. A lot of the information is like, a law enforcement officer said this, but I haven't really seen it printed anywhere, or it's just kind of like hearsay, I think. But
whether it is or not, I think, it all makes kind of sense because, 80% of what I hear, are people's opinions about what's going on. And again, we're laymen, so it's our opinion as to what's going on.
This is all speculation and discussion for entertainment purposes.
Totally, that's right. But I believe that, from some of the stuff I heard, and it makes complete sense, is that when they got back to his parents' house in Pennsylvania, and I'll say law enforcement because, I heard FBI, I heard local PA police were kind of staking out the house because we already have this name, right? Mm-hmm. We have this name. We just need to corroborate, this DNA match because that will add to the stack over here. Mm-hmm. So what they did was when the garbage goes out, they can take the garbage, right? So garbage went out, it was curbside or whatever. They took the garbage, they ran some DNA. They did not absolutely match any DNA in the garbage to Brian Kohberger. But what they did match was his father.
Right.
So they could tell through the DNA profile that we have a DNA match to the father of the suspect.
Right.
That
so
was 100%.
The trash they pulled, they said, we know this trash is the father of the DNA that's on the knife sheath. That's how they made the match.
So then with that, they got the judge to sign a search warrant to go into the house. Now I have something that corroborates all the little bit of information we have. He has a white Elantra. He's tall, bushy eyebrows, from the Washington area. Right? DNA matched to someone in this guy's family.
Right.
So we want to go in because there's a guy staying there now. So we want to find out who this guy is, right? They believe it's Brian Kohberger.
Oh, they're going to arrest him. They went in to arrest him.
So they go in to the house at 2 a.m. and according to reports, this Brian Kohberger is standing in the kitchen and
in the middle of the night
and wrapping up his garbage and putting it in baggies. And it was found out a little bit later that he was taking that garbage and not putting it in his own trash can.
Right.
He was putting it in a neighbor's trash can.
Right.
So someone who is completely innocent of everything that is being accused of him now, what weird behavior.
It was weird.
So with that, they ended up bringing him in, getting his DNA now, right? Because you can subpoena that.
Oh, yeah. As soon as he was arrested, they took him in and got his DNA.
Those were the match, and that's why he was, he's been arrested. They've held him, questioned him. It all came back.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. So he's been in jail ever since.
And one of the rumors from Pennsylvania was that he said to a police officer, was anybody else arrested the moment he got arrested or when they were taking him in? So I don't think that's ever been verified either. So that's kind of been hanging out there as a rumor. He also stated that he can't wait to be exonerated, which was an odd choice of words. Usually, like, you would expect someone to say proven innocent. Like, exonerated is like way, like, I'm going to be proven that I had nothing to do with this. So that to say that immediately, it almost made me feel like, I don't know, to say that you would have to already have in your head, like, they're coming after me for this or something. Like, I don't know. That's because that's where my theories are.
So I think, at this point with, him being arrested, him in jail, I think, from the little bit I've heard, because I haven't seen too much kind of post-arrest, there has been, the PCA came out, people like looked that up and down to understand exactly what evidence is being shown to the public at this point, where there were some things that were corroborated, like the witness saying, I saw a tall person with bushy eyebrows, and what she actually heard during the event, so that was all in there. There were some other things as well that I think people could say, but I think what the community is doing now is, okay, what isn't publicly available? What else could be out there? And I think some of the things that they're seeing makes them feel like, okay, do we really have the right person here? Because this looks suspicious, or this person looks suspicious, or this event seems to be crossing.
Yeah, the questions come up. So I brought up, why not bring him in right away? Why let him leave the state? The wrong year of the car. So I'm going to start a list. We need a whiteboard back here with we need to keep tallies on both sides. So some of the other events that happened were, I believe it was when he was on the drive to Pennsylvania, they issued a search warrant for his apartment. Maybe it was after they would have to make the arrest, right? And then do a search warrant to go in. I don't know how that works.
But it was pretty close to that.
And there's body cams, right? And I've mentioned before that people from the public have done FOIA requests and gotten the body cam. So I've seen them, and they're banging on the door like he's in there, open up, but they know he's not there. They know, and they go in, and you would expect something to be in there. Hairs. It was mentioned that there were IDs, so don't know whose IDs were in there, but they did take some IDs, and I'm pretty sure it was in the apartment, not the car. But other than that, it was just basically laptops. People freaked out because I guess it was a 2-bedroom apartment, and one of the bedrooms was locked. Why would the bedroom be locked? But then universities will rent out bedrooms individually in apartments. So if that one's not rented out, it was probably locked up. I don't know. Those were all the speculations. They just took laptops. The joke was because we actually read the evidence list of what they took, and there was a pizza cutter on there. They took a pizza cutter, pillowcase with maybe some red stuff on it, shower curtain, I don't know, things like that. So that was what was in the apartment. The other thing for me that did it, and the whole true crime community, everybody was saying when they found the car that, and even the people who were like, he's guilty, this is the guy, everybody was like, there's got to be blood evidence in that car. If there is not any kind of evidence in that car, then I'm going to say it can't be him. It's not him. And don't you know, they did not list anything in that car. So I don't know, maybe they've held stuff back. I don't know about that, but that was a big one for me, wow, there's nothing in there, not a hair, not a spot, not a speck of anything. And then things that do make it look suspicious, and just to tell a little bit more of who this guy is, we said he's the teacher's assistant, but he was a criminology student, and he actually studied under a really big named person in Pennsylvania, got this position to come to Washington State University. And one of the fishy things that he did was post that survey. Remember that survey on Reddit?
Yeah. Let's talk about that survey, because that's another thing that I want to put in the pile of.
Right.
That's suspicious.
Yeah, I'm giving you your little. I'm trying to point out my little. This is questionable, but then there are things that are like.
So from what I didn't see the whole thing. I just saw excerpts, so I didn't see it from beginning to end, but just some excerpts of some of the questions that he was asking on this survey. And it was basically him saying, if you have committed a crime, and it was about feelings. It was like, how did you feel, as you were stalking your victim, or right prior, to after, how did you feel, right? So this is a person who is, I thought, studying evidence, right? I want to, process and understand evidence. And this was more of feelings. And to me, we've always had this kind of debate, mostly around serial killers, right? When we talk about, serial killers, and we've watched a bunch of serial killer documentaries. I don't know why we're so demented, but that's what we do. But it always seemed like one of the things that they talked about was they've always had this urge, right? This urge was either something that was nature or nurture, right? Either I was abused by somebody and I wanted to lash out, or I just had this weird thing in my head and I could never figure it out. I had great parents, but I was just goofy in some way, that made me do this, And they always talk about this urge. And when the urge met an opportunity,
right,
is when
the event would happen.
The event would happen, or the beast was unleashed.
Right.
Right. And, that Dahmer's talked about it. Ted Bundy's talked about it. Many serial killers, the who's the big tall guy, talked about it at length.
Oh, Ed.
Ed, what's his name? I forget. But,
I'll insert the name.
But, these were people.
Not Ed Gein. Yeah. No, that's the other guy.
No, but this was something that was, always with them, and when they saw the opportunity and they had that urge, and I just have this feeling, my personal feeling, again, I don't know this guy, but here's somebody who was fascinated by this field. Here's somebody who wanted to do this for a living. Now, you would hope that person would be like, because I want to do good. I had, a rare disease as a child, and I was misdiagnosed by doctors. I want to grow up to be a doctor, right? You hear those stories. This person, hey, I saw someone wrongfully accused. I want to grow up and be a criminalist, But he's fascinated by this. Not fascinated to get a bachelor's degree, not fascinated to get a master's degree, but fascinated enough to get a PhD, so...
Go all the way, yeah.
So he has... except for this touch DNA, he has, because there's
nothing in the car.
Nothing in the car, very little in the apartment that we know of,
seems like he's hiding the trash.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of things that's like, you understand maybe how to get away with this. Just as you would understand how to catch somebody if they were doing this. So I just feel like there was a fascination there. It's my own little motive. It could be wrong, but he had this fascination. He had urges. Urges met an opportunity, which I think we need to find out, how was this house an opportunity?
Yeah,
right?
I want to get to that. But yes, I put that on your side, that the survey was suspicious, those kinds of questions. However, you can also look at it through the lens of, that's what universities do.
Yes.
I know when I was in college, the psychology department especially had, and all the students there, no matter what you were studying, you would get points in your class, no matter what class it was. Hey, go to the psychology department and participate in some of their studies or do one of their surveys, and it could help with your grades. Like, that's how much they were looking for people to do that. So it's not odd that a PhD student would have to do a survey for something for their degree. Yeah. And someone who's studying that field that he is, It's more like looking at, if you're trying to profile somebody, you want to look at those kinds of things, like how the people were feeling or where is their mindset at when they're about to commit crimes or after the crime. So it could have had something to do with profiling people too. So, I mean, there's always different ways to look at things, but.
Sure. Yep. If I was an attorney, I would be able to look at both sides and try to convict on both sides of the issue.
So speaking of attorneys, so currently in present day, they are having hearings. It's not gone to trial yet. It's not going to go to trial this summer. It's supposed to hopefully be on track to go on trial next summer. But they're currently having hearings where the defense has been asking like 15 times to get evidence turned over from the prosecution, the DNA being one of them. The DNA has not. And the defense keeps asking, how did you get to my client? How did you get to my client? Because they haven't seen the evidence yet. So even like that video footage that they're saying this is his car, it's been handed over. This is the words from the defense attorney, in pieces, and like audio might be missing from this piece. And so they don't have everything. And the defense attorney has just come flat out and said, I believe in his innocence. My client is innocent. And I don't know. You could let us know in the comments how many times you've heard a defense attorney just come flat out and say that. Usually they'll just say, my client has the right to a fair trial because they're doing everything they can to defend them to the best of their ability. So I thought that was quite telling for her to come out and just say that. And I wanted to talk real quick about, we went over like the evidence and why he came to be arrested, but what do you think might be the motive for him?
That's the question I'm asking you is, I want you to go first, I guess. Because, I think I have my suspicions, but, I don't know enough of all of the background. The only thing that I've heard that makes me think that there is some connection, even though people have come out and said there is no connection or, very little connection.
Oh, yes, I can explain that.
Yeah, which was one of the sisters of the victims or the father of the victims I saw on a show had, once the name came out, immediately went to social media to see if any of the people that were in that house were connected to him on any social media, and there was one. And I know you had said, well, anybody could put anything, but this was so quick. Like, they probably got a name before the public got a name. True. And they immediately... Yes, they even said that, yeah. So they had like a few hours to be able to get on there. And, it had shown that there was not, interaction, but, like maybe friends or following or something like that, right? So, yes. So the people were not unknown to him. I don't know how well known they were to him. There was some speculation that he went to a restaurant that two of them worked at, So, there could be some connection and maybe an infatuation or, I don't know what. It could have just been an innocent conversation at a table like, hey, would you like to go out? No way, and next thing you know, that's feeding the beast, we don't know any of that stuff.
That's right? That incel theory.
But... I think what you're saying is there's very little to no connection. Yeah. So motives are going to be very difficult to prove in this case. Not that you need it to convict, but it's very helpful for a jury. That's
a tricky one because on mainstream media, there's been this narrative that it was stalking, from day one. I think the prosecution led us all to believe that he was stalking the victims on social media. And yes, the parents did say that. And that family, it's one family of the victims, they're very tech savvy. They're the ones that got video surveillance. They found out exactly what time the girls got home. They're the ones that found the food truck video. And yeah, they went on social media and did say that, I guess there was a profile that they believe is his that was following at least one of the girls, if not both. I don't know if there were any comments or anything like that. But the reason that is questioned is because the defense, they're trying to start, I don't know if they're starting the jury pool yet, but they know they have to prepare for that. It's coming down the road. So the defense, and they're debating where to have the trial. Are they going to move the trial to another county?
Right.
So the defense did a survey because they want to see if there's bias in the county where this happened. And the questions they asked, it wasn't, the questions were not created by the defense team. They hired a professional who does this all over the country for many trials. It's a common thing to do. And the questions came from what's out there in the public. What are in the newspapers? What are the facts that have been released widely and often? And one of the questions was like, do you know that he was stalking the victims or something like that? And the prosecution in one of the hearings that they've been having stood up in open court that was televised, said that is false. That is a false statement. There was no stalking. Mm-hmm. And that just happened recently. And that was a big shocker to people too, because that has kind of been implied this whole time. So I would add that to my list of another thing that why make us think that and then come out and say, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah, I think, as far as motive goes, just like you said, stalking would be a great way to prove that there was an infatuation,
right.
Maybe there was a rejection, thus caused, this event. However, before you completely put it up on your side of the board, I think the definition of stalking to me is, somebody who is making phone calls,
watching,
going to, their place of business, causing them some, grief.
Following.
I think if I'm a Facebook friend or I go eat dinner at where you work, doesn't necessarily constitute as stalking.
Right.
But you could be watching, right? And maybe have an infatuation, but you're not crossing the lines of stalking. So, little weird that the prosecution wanted to take that off the table because I guess there's degrees of this, so I would like to keep that open, that maybe he was stalking in some way. But I think if you set the precedence that if I'm friends with you on Facebook, that means I could be stalking you, I don't think you want to set that precedent. So,
and because they flat out said in court that that's not true, I think we can pretty much say that's not true.
Yeah. Following them around or being obsessive about it, in the way that stalking laws, I guess, are written. Probably didn't meet that that standard.
Also, make a connection. Like, they're even searching for what's the connection. Like, how did he even know these people at all? And like you said, they worked at two of the victims worked at a vegan restaurant, and reportedly he was vegan, is vegan. So it's likely he might have, because these two towns have, limited resources, places to go, things like that. So if you have a vegan restaurant in one of these two cities and you're vegan, you've probably went there. So that could make a connection, but I don't know. One of the other suspicious things to me, that if he's truly the suspect and they have all this evidence that they say they have, that is checking out the car, the DNA, all that stuff. So once he's arrested, then, the timeline starts there for the right to a fair and speedy trial.
Oh, yes. We should talk about that too, but go ahead.
Yeah. So once someone's arrested, there's a timeline and a process that legally has to be followed because people have rights in the United States.
For sure.
And they have to meet deadlines and get things done in a certain time. And one of those things is having a preliminary trial, because you got to go to trial within a certain amount of time. So they had set a date for a preliminary trial, I believe they set a date. And one of the surviving roommates was supposed to come to testify at that, and reportedly did not want to come. And also reportedly, this roommate has exculpatory evidence, which means evidence that's going to show he's innocent or could not have done this. Right. But that roommate would not come, is afraid to come back to this place. And I understand being afraid, not wanting to be triggered and exposed to all of that. I understand that, but it seemed like afraid, like I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get arrested for something. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's verified. That's just what's been reported, or spoken about, speculated about possibly. But instead of going to a preliminary trial where the defense would be there and the prosecution would be there and they would start, having access to all the evidence, the prosecution went quickly, like in the deep night, hidden in secrecy, went to a grand jury trial instead of the preliminary trial. And I've been on a grand jury trial here in my county, and when you do that, I guess you can call one just for a specific case. It's just, a group of jurors, they call in, and it's only the prosecution that gets to be there, not the defense. Mm-hmm. So the prosecution has all the power. Mm-hmm. They share what they want to share. They persuade how they want to persuade. They show what they want to show. Yep. They're very influential in how they'll say, we're very confident that we have, that was my experience, that Yep. they spoke like that. Yep. So the grand jury indicted. I guess that's how, mm-hmm. They say, yes, you have enough evidence to go to trial. Right. Instead of going to a preliminary trial where the defense could have offered up maybe an alibi or called in some witnesses mm-hmm. That didn't happen. Right. And then after that didn't happen, I believe is when he gave up his right to a speedy trial.
Which I don't
understand that either.
Yeah.
Although, no, I can say I do.
Okay.
If you are a defendant and the prosecution is not giving over everything collected, all the surveillance footage, video footage, body cameras, cell phone data, DNA evidence for your representative, for your defense attorney to see, and there could be things in there to help prove what you want to prove, your whereabouts, your, that, and they're not giving it to you. Mm-hmm. If you go to the speedy trial, you won't be prepared because you're not going to have the evidence. Mm-hmm. That's the way I see it.
Okay. And that is, grounds for appeal or mistrial. So, you don't know on day one when I give up this right that they aren't going to give it to me. I've already given up the right, so how do I know?
Well, they still haven't, so.
Yeah, so how do you know that the next day you wouldn't have gotten it, right? You made a decision in a vacuum. You can't predict what the future is going to be. You made a decision immediately, I don't want a speedy trial, right? You don't know that the next day you weren't going to get all the evidence that you needed. You don't know that.
But you've
made the decision to give up the right to a speedy trial.
I think I would have a gut feeling in the defense attorney, because the defense is helping guide your client into what to do. So why would your defense attorney say, hey, sit in jail for 2 years?
Well, that's the thing that gets me too.
Right? So there's got to be a reason. Yeah. And I think it's because something's going on.
Yeah.
Something's going on. They're not turning stuff over. The stuff they are turning over is like
I think one of the
bits
things
and
you say
pieces.
all the time in every show that we want, that guy's acting innocent. That guy acts innocent. And one of the things you said all the time, if I was ever arrested for something I didn't do, I would be screaming, yelling from the hilltops that I didn't do this. Anytime I had an opportunity, they took me out the van. I was walking to the thing. I didn't do this. Somebody come and help me. This is crazy. Let's find it. You would be screaming. This guy is just stoic. He is the opposite of what you say how people should act in that situation.
Mm-hmm. And this has come up in some shows, and I don't know. There's a reason, I guess. Tell us in the comments why that's not happening.
And I know you feel convicted about that, about shows that we don't have a kind of a vested interest in or something like that, that you say that. I think we also agree that everybody acts differently, to trauma, or to something like, wait a minute, you're looking at me? I'm not a bad person. I don't want to seem like I'm crazy. So if I start screaming from the hilltops, that I did this, people are going to think I'm crazy. And, I want to be poised and, and so I think people act differently. I'm just putting out there that you have always been on the side of that you need to scream and yell. And if it needs to be crazy, act crazy, but tell the world you didn't do that.
And obviously his attorney has advised him not to, because not only has he not said anything, his family has not said anything. Maybe his sisters might have given a couple interviews or something, but his parents have not said anything. And I just feel like if there's truly maybe some big corruption out there, or you truly were set up, and it's high ups, you might be keeping your mouth shut and watching your back and trying to let your attorney do everything they could. But
and I think everything that I've heard from the Koberger side of it, past friends and things, no one's been very oh, he's a good guy. He's, I think even his sister was a little distant, from him, and his past friends are he was kind of a drug addict, and it's, I would want somebody to, come to my defense and be like, gosh, I worked with this guy for 20 years, and he's never exhibited anything like that. He's been kind to people. He's, no one's coming to this guy.
Don't say no one so fast. I'm going to give us a little assignment for our next episode. And we'll, we've covered the suspect pretty good on this one. One funny, I don't know if it's funny, interesting, I don't know if it's a fact, if it's been verified, but something that people have shared is that he worked at a fish place, a fish gutting place, and got let go or something because he couldn't even cut the fish the right way or something. But he went into a house and all by himself in 15 minutes and did this. But that's kind of the true crime community little, I don't know if you call it a joke, but our assignment, I think, because there are a lot of interviews out there he did have a high school group of friends and classmates and workout buddies. And I'm not saying there's not oddities and things like that, but there are people that have spoke out. So I think maybe we could watch some of those and I'll show you what people have. What people have said.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that. No, I think it's a good, I think as this case builds and as we get closer to next summer, there's going to be a lot of speculation, and, I'm here for it. I want something to turn, my attention somewhere else, but nothing has presented itself in any other potential suspect yet. So I'm waiting for you to either bring that to me and show me where I can start filling another bucket of a different suspect, because nothing has
well, there's a lot of topics that are going to lead us down some different paths. So we'll cover one of them on the next episode about this. So we asked a lot of questions and shared a lot of information that maybe we didn't get quite right on this one. So talk to us in the comments. We want to interact with you about this. And I think we'll leave it there until the next episode. Yep. All right. Thank you for joining us.
It's free.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.